You're listening to the Study Podcast with Dr. Paul Wegner. I'm your host, Tyler Sanders, and I'm here with Dr. Paul Wegner. He's going to give us the Hebrew word of the day.
Oh, before I do that, Tyler, can I show you this picture?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to do Proverbs today, and I think this picture is great to help you picture what Proverbs are. So here's a dry desert, or almost deserty. But notice there's a creek flowing through the middle there, or a spring. And I think that's like what Proverbs are in our lives. Right. That I think that's the like a little stream coming through to give us wisdom. And I just think it's, and then notice where the stream is, there's all kinds of green, lush vegetation.
There's a tree next to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
that's
that's a good picture to help us picture what Proverbs are.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, now I'll give you the Hebrew words of the day.
Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, all right. The first one actually is proverb. What does proverb mean? Well, in English, it means a short, pithy statement in general use that teaches a general truth or a piece of advice. But in Hebrew, it's actually broader. It can even be a taunt, which means it provides provoke or tense to tease someone with mockery or insults. Like Deuteronomy 28 says, it has this word in it and says, "You became a horror, a proverb, or a taunt among all the people where the Lord drives you." Huh. So that's another one. And then it could just be a common saying, because in 1 Samuel 10:12, it actually says, "A man that there said, 'Now who is their father?' Therefore it became a proverb, 'Is Saul among the prophets?'" I mean, that's not like a bit of wisdom or anything like that. It's just a common saying. Yeah. So that's another one. It can become a byword. I had to look this up to see what a byword was. It's a person or thing cited as notorious or outstanding example or embodiment of something. So here it is in Proverbs 69:11. "When I made sackcloth my clothing, I became a byword to them." So it's something like they would taunt you and almost like make fun of you and stuff like that because, because God was punishing you. I assume that's what the psalmist is saying.
Interesting.
Yeah. It can be a teaching story. In Job 27:1, it says, "Then Job continued his discourse."
That would be the same word.
Yeah. But remember, Job is kind of it is like a proverb because it's trying to get you to think about stuff and in a creative way. So I think I can see why that whole story of Job is like a proverb.
Yeah, right.
And it can also be like a riddle. In Ezekiel 18:2, it says, "What do you mean by using this proverb concerning the land of Israel, saying, 'The fathers eat the sour grapes, but the children's teeth are set on edge'?" And I don't know if you know that context, but Ezekiel is when they're in captivity or in the Babylonian exile. And the younger people, the children, were saying, "We didn't even do this. Our fathers sinned and we're suffering the consequences." So they ate the sour grapes, but we're suffering the consequences of that, meaning our teeth are set on edge.
Right.
So it's kind of a riddle, and you have to kind of figure out what it's getting at.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So that's the first one. So I wanted you to know that proverb is broad. A proverb in Hebrew is broader than just what we think it is. Okay. Yep. All right. Next word is the word fool, and Hebrew has several different words for fool. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction." That word for fools is the middle one here. Okay. So the first one is a petit, which is a naive person, a youth. He's inexperienced, easily seduced, but needing instruction so that but they are capable of learning. It's just that they're naive at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Then a wheel is someone who purposely chooses to sin. He knows better, but he still chooses to do it.
Yeah.
And then a kasil is like the hardest core fool. There's someone who laughs and mocks at sin. They're hard-hearted and do not want to change.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they make fun of other people who don't want to sin. Yeah.
Yeah. So the scoffers kind of.
Yeah, so you can see the different levels of fools. Some are much more hardcore than the other words. So that's kind of
in Proverbs 1:7, we're getting like the middle one, basically.
Yeah, somebody who.
So this isn't just a person who's unlearned or something like that, or hasn't learned something yet. This is a purposeful rejection.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll get us started anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Here's my overview. I think Proverbs. I got the title as learning to live wisely, and I spelled it wrong. Sorry. Caught myself. Sorry. There's several authors in there. We're going to look later, and it'll give different. In each one of the sections, I'll show you who it claims it comes from, and then. It's probably dated. My guess is it's a collection of Proverbs. So it could have been collected over a period of time. So I say collected from about the 10th century, which would be in Solomon's time period, all the way down to the 6th century. Post Hezekiah's men are in the 700s. They claim to be one of them, the groups that do it. And my guess is it was probably still open a little longer and included some of them. The problem is you have no idea when these things, there's no real historical background to them, because if they're really true wisdom, they're true wisdom at any time in history, right? So so to have a context for them may not help you much, because they could have come in any historical time period.
Well, and like you said at the beginning, like some proverbs are just common sayings, and sometimes those things can take on a meaning of their own apart from a direct context. And, how would you ever tell when it started?
Right. And then continues on throughout history too. Yeah. Again, because if it's real wisdom, then people will want
last.
It. Yeah. Good. It's got one introduction and then 8 collections. Now, the last couple of collections are in what I call appendices. You've got the sayings of Agur, King Lemuel, and then that ideal wife. So you've got those kind of, I put them as appendices, because they're not really integral to the other parts of the book, but they're crucial for wisdom. So I think that's how we did that. In the introduction, we'll talk about this again, so I'll show you later. But one thing that is interesting is that they can either have single proverbs, and you can have several chapters of just one proverb after another. Yeah. But sometimes they group them. And in fact, one of them I'm going to show you, it almost looks like a story, like a narrative proverb. So it's kind of interesting that they are more different that way than some of the other ways.
Yeah, right.
All right. So it gives part of Proverbs, it gives us 6 reasons. One is to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in understanding, to give prudence to the naive, knowledge and discretion to the youth, and wisdom to the wise. And then the last one is to understand proverbs and riddles. So that's kind of the purpose for the book, is to give you wisdom. But a lot of times it's to give you wisdom in creative ways so that you think about something. My wife likes to say, it's in a proverb that sometimes she gets it and then she gets it again. And I think that's a really good description of what it means to actually, you see the surfacey understanding, and that makes sense. But then you see what's behind it, what they're really getting at. And how we're going to end this is I've got about 46 proverbs that I think are really brilliant, and I want to go through them and just make sure we understand them. But I think they're really helpful. So all right. Okay, so key ideas is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I think it's interesting that it says it's the beginning of wisdom. It's not the end of wisdom. It's just starting. So when you fear the Lord, it puts you on a path that will get you into wisdom. Does that make sense? So so it's not the end all category. What it is it's what gets you into it so that you can start learning wisdom. Yeah. So I thought that's
I've heard the dissertation described the same way for your PhD.
Yeah, that could be.
And for a PhD student, you're looking at your dissertation like, this is the biggest thing I'm ever going to do in my life.
That's right.
And your professors are like, this is your first step. Now, once you've completed that, now you can start the real work.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Number 2, the way of wisdom leads to life. It's real clear. You'll see this when we get into it, that they're pretty clear that a fool wanders from the path, but a person who's wise will stick to the path and he'll get to life. And we'll see that. And
life, does that mean like as opposed to like death and destruction?
Actually, often it is that. When we look at some of these proverbs, the destruction and death is clearly a person who's wandered off the path.
Yeah.
Okay. And it leads to actual physical death.
Yeah.
Okay, Proverbs are general principles, not promises, and that actually becomes really important. That one's kind of the standard one on that is the one that's train up a child in the way that he will go, and he will not depart from it when he is old.
Right.
I do believe that's wisdom. If you don't train them up in the beginning, they're never going to get to be right in the end.
Right.
But we can't.
It's not a guarantee.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee, and I think we have to realize that.
Yeah.
All right. And then wisdom helps us understand the retribution principle. Do you remember the retribution principle was if you do good things, you'll be blessed. If you don't do good things, you'll be cursed.
Yeah.
What wisdom does is it helps us understand more that it's not often a guarantee, but these bits of wisdom will help get you understand. That's why if you live a blessed life, you'll be blessed in the end, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's some of the background anyway. The book of Proverbs is a composition of an introduction and 8 collections of sayings. Solomon is credited with some of them since he was known for his wisdom. First Kings, we'll look at that in a minute. 1 Kings 4 tells us that he had some 3,000 Proverbs and 1,005 Psalms. And we know some of the Psalms, right? I think last week we might have looked at Psalm 72, but there's another one, Psalm 127 has that associated with Solomon. So, and then Hezekiah and his men are also claimed to have collected some of them. So we'll look at that in Proverbs 25.
Okay.
All right, here's what First Kings 4:29 through 34 says. Now God gave Solomon wisdom and very great discernment and breadth of mind. I actually love that term. Breadth of mind means he had a capacity to understand that was very broad. I think that's brilliant. All right. Like the sand that was on the seashore. So that's pretty amazing too.
Yeah.
Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the sons of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman the Kohal, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was known in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees from the cedar that is in Lebanon, even to the hyssop that grows on the wall. First of all, notice if he really spoke 3,000 proverbs, then that means we only have a small portion of them, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So it can't be that we've got all of them. And then even of the songs.
Same thing, right?
Yeah. Okay. Notice it says, and he spoke of trees from the cedar that's in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows. So he's using nature to try to teach wisdom principles. And I think that's what it's telling me. Yeah. And he spoke also of animals and birds and creeping things and fish. Mm-hmm. So he'll look around in nature and see, is there a lesson here that he can teach? And there must have been a lot of them because we look in Proverbs and that's a lot of times you'll see that.
Yeah.
All right. And then men came from all the peoples to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. So that's kind of neat too. So Solomon's supposed to be so wise that people would come to Israel just to hear him.
Yeah.
I've often thought also that other nations have to have some general amount of wisdom, or it actually does no good. If Solomon's the most brilliant person in all the world,
right,
but nobody could tell that because they don't have any wisdom to understand it, then it doesn't do any good, does it?
Yeah.
So I think that's why God gives a general amount of wisdom to everyone, but can also endow somebody like a Solomon.
Yeah, with specific.
Yeah. All right. So authors, there's probably several of them. Final composition could be as late as the 6th century. Background, very difficult to determine the background, and thus emphasizing the universal nature of wisdom. So I'm not sure it helps us much to try to figure out who authored them or where they came from or stuff like that.
Yeah.
The text claims that Solomon in chapter 10, verse 1 and 25:1, Hezekiah compiled some, or Hezekiah and his men, 25 through 29, Agur in chapter 30, verse 1, and then King Lemuel in 31, verse 1. So that's kind of a big overview of where they come from.
Yeah.
All right, first let's look at the introduction and its purpose.
Yeah.
Here's what you've got: the title, the Proverb of Solomon, the son of King David, king of Israel. Then you've got the 6-fold purpose: to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive wisdom or instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive. Now, here we're going to go through and see. I'm going to actually at the end say, look, we've got something for everyone here. So there's prudence to the naive, to the youth, knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear an increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. And then to understand proverb and a figure, and then the words of the wise and their riddles. So you can see whether you're a young person who's naive, there's wisdom for that. Or if you're a wise man or a man of understanding, there's still something you can learn from the Proverbs.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of brilliant. Now, I wanted to show that's Proverbs 1 through 6. The instruction of Amenhotep, Amenhotep is very similar to this. So it's instruction from a king of Egypt. And here's what it sounds like: the beginning of the teaching of life, the testimony for prosperity, all precepts for intercourse with elders, the rules for courtiers, to know how to return an answer to him who said it, and to direct a report to the one who has sent him, in order to direct him in the way of life, to make him prosper upon the earth. Let his heart go down into its shrine, steer him away from evil, and to rescue him from the mouth of the rabble, revered in the mouth of the people. See, that sounds very similar to the purpose for Proverbs. I don't think it's a direct quote or anything like that. But if it actually is real wisdom, you can see how there's going to be overlaps, and the purpose for real wisdom is going to be the same no matter where you are.
Yeah.
So that makes some sense, I think. All right. So now we're going to look at a father's instruction. So that's the second section. All right. And when I say father, there's several times it also talks about a mother too. So I'm assuming it's talking about parental wisdom and explaining to children.
Yeah.
Here's what it says in verse 8 of chapter 1. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. So there, now you can see that both of them are brought into it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the next couple of chapters, all the way to chapter 10, is basically going to be a father's, or a parent, let's say, his instruction on how to live your life wisely, basically, to their children. All right. Here, Proverbs 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some of them that I think are really, really great.
Yeah.
So here's chapter 5. My son, give attention to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may observe discretion and your lips may reserve knowledge. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways are unstable. She does not know it. Now then, my sons, notice it's started out with a singular son, and now it talks about plural. Now, I don't know if that means that, because this could be a literal father, right? But back at that time, it could also be like a teacher who taught all his students and was giving wisdom at all those points. So maybe, even though it says to his son, that could fit a pupil that a teacher is teaching, probably. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's probably, it could be very literal, a father to a mother, or a father to a son and mother to a son. And I think that's probably how most of them would work. But I think it's also possible that it could be a wisdom teacher teaching his students how to live a life that's godly and wise. Yeah.
It's not necessarily limited to a strict parental relationship.
Right. Okay, so verse 7 says, "Now then, my sons, listen to me and do not depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her, and do not go near the door of her house, or you will give your vigor to others and your years to the cruel one. And strangers will be filled with your strength, and your hard-earned goods will go to the house of an alien. And you groan at your final end when your flesh and your body are consumed." See, that's actually really brilliant. And here's something that a father or a wisdom teacher could actually teach somebody that doesn't know this. We all know that sin looks really good, right?
Sure.
So the house of the adulteress is going to look really, really good, and it's going to sound really good until you see the consequences of it.
Right.
So that's what this father or mother parent is trying to do, is to give them wisdom that they won't see if they just see the nice things that sin has to offer.
Yeah.
So do you see, that's part of why I think this is such good wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. And this one you got to think a little about. All right, so it's later on in verse 5 or chapter 5. "Drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be yours alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth. As a loving hind and a graceful doe, let her breasts satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. For why should you, my son, be exhilarated with an adulteress and embrace the bosom of a foreigner? For the ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he watches all his paths. His own iniquity will capture the wicked, and he will be held with the cords of his sin. He will die for lack of instruction, and in greatness of his folly he will go astray." This is brilliant on so many different levels. First of all, it's brilliant wisdom, right?
Yeah.
But then it's also a picture that you can think through, and that, in basically talking about keeping yourself pure.
Yeah.
But that means that every time, we all know as parents, that's a really hard thing to talk about with your children, right?
Right.
But the way Proverbs does it does it in pictures, and it's something that the guy would get. The son's certainly going to figure out what he's talking about, but he got to say it in ways that are creative. And what's going to happen is basically every time this guy walks down the street now and he sees a mud puddle, he's going to remember what his parents had taught him. So,
well, and also you kind of have that same principle with like David and Nathan, right?
Yeah. Oh,
David couldn't see himself.
Yeah.
But he understood justice whenever Nathan put it in terms of like, the man and the sheep, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, he kind of gets this emotional response out of David, and because he does have a sense of right and wrong. And when he's not looking at himself, it's very clear, and then when that kind of, Nathan does that switch, well, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I see it, I can see what I didn't see earlier.
Yeah. So isn't that brilliant though? The way he did it, I think, was so creative. And so I think it's teaching us that, we could think of ways on how do I talk to my child to teach them wisdom in creative ways that now when they go about their daily life, they're going to see illustrations that I talked to them about that just keeps coming back to them. It's brilliant. Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're in the second section, and these ones are mostly just single ones. I mean, there's a lot of them that are just one proverb after another. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here's Proverbs 10:1 says, "The Proverbs of Solomon: A wise son makes his father glad, but a foolish son is a grief to his mother." Once again, not only is that a proverb, but it's also parallel. So it's Hebrew poetry. So I'm sure that the father being glad and the mother being grieved, it's going to have the same for both parents. But it's kind of interesting that you've got a contrast here of what a good son. And we all know that when our children turn out good, it's really an honor for us. If they don't turn out so good, it's kind of an embarrassment. I think this is basically what he's saying. Now, here's the funny thing. If this really is from Solomon, remember Rehoboam was probably one of the silliest, fools in the biblical text. He splits the kingdom apart. And so it's interesting. So you could have a wise father and still have a very foolish son who just doesn't listen. So, so just wanted you to see that. Okay, Proverbs 10 says, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is made fat. So there's like one proverb to get you thinking about this. Then the righteous man hates falsehood, but a wicked man acts disgustingly and shamefully. Righteousness guards the one who is blameless, but wickedness perverts the sinner. There's one who pretends to be rich but has nothing. Another pretends to be poor but has great wealth. The ransom of a man's life is his wealth, but the poor hears no rebuke. And then 9, the light of the righteous rejoices, but the lamp of the wicked goes out. There's that retribution principle coming back. Now, what I wanted to show is these are just Proverb 1, 2, right after another, don't seem to be related, but are collected in this chapter and just one after another. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little different than some of the others. Let me show you the next one.
For sure.
Yeah. The next one are individual proverbs, but they speak on how to have a blessed life. So I've grouped them kind of this way. So here's verse 7. The memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise of heart will receive commands, but the babbling fool will be ruined. He who walks in integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his way will be found out. He who winks with the eye causes trouble, and a babbling fool will be ruined. And the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So see, all these proverbs seem to be about how to have a blessed life or a wise living. So it's interesting. So you can have groups of proverbs like that too.
Yeah, kind of thematically connected.
Yeah. So remember, the other ones didn't seem to be connected at all. These ones at least have some similar concepts. This one is kind of, I thought these grouped probably a lot of, there's one that may not be it, but I think most of these are talking about the tongue or speech. Like a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouth of fools spouts folly. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching evil and the good. And I think that how that fits is it's talking about using your words wisely because God's watching, I think.
Sure, right.
Yeah. And then a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but perversion in it crushes the spirit. A fool rejects his father's discipline, but he who regards reproof is sensible. So I think those are, I think the idea of a tongue or speech comes through in most of those.
Yeah.
All right. Now we got some anonymous sayings. They said their words. Here's what it says in verse 17. Incline your ear and hear the words of the wise and apply your mind to my knowledge. So the words of the wise seem to be how these things are collected.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what they do. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. For the Lord will plead his case and take life to those who rob them. Notice this one has either 2 or 3 together verses. So these ones, what I'm trying to show, these are 3 or 4 unit proverbs. So they're not the short ones that you had before. These ones are a little longer.
Yeah.
So 24 says, do not associate with a man given to anger or go with a hot-tempered man, or you will learn his ways and find a snare for yourself. So again, a little longer than the other one. Do not be among those who give pledges, among those who become guarantors for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should he take your bed from under you? So the logic is if you have nothing, they can even steal the very clothes you're going to lay on.
Right.
These ones are, again, 3 or 4 unit proverbs, so they're longer. Do not move the ancient boundary or go to the fields of the fatherless, for their Redeemer is strong. He will plead their case against you. Apply your heart to discipline and your ears to words of knowledge. And then 13 and 14. Do not hold back discipline from a child. Though you strike him with a rod, he will not die. You will strike him with a rod and rescue his soul from Sheol. So again, a longer proverb.
Yeah.
Okay. So that one's kind of interesting because you see now there's different groupings of it. And now you got more anonymous sayings from wise people. So it says, these are also, and this is verse 23, these also are sayings of the wise. Yeah, to know partiality in judgment is not good. So that was one of them. But notice you've got these little groupings of them now that on how to divide the book. So it's kind of interesting. Here's Proverbs 24, verses 28 and 29. Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, and do not deceive with your lips. Do not say, thus I will do to him as he has done to me. I will render to the man according to his works. So now you got a wisdom statement that, again, is longer than some of these shorter ones you had.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then here's another one. This one I wanted to show you. It's almost like a short story. So this is verses 30 through 34. I passed by the field of the sluggard and by the vineyard of the man lacking sense. And behold, it was completely overgrown with thistles. Its surface was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. When I saw, I reflected upon it, and I looked, and I received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then your poverty will come as a robber, and your want like an armed man. So that's almost like a story explaining a wisdom. So Proverbs have quite a variety of ways they can teach wisdom.
Yeah. And in first person too, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I think that would be more exciting, right? Because a person would join in better if it's first person.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now we'll see more Proverbs of Solomon. And that starts at chapter 25. Here's what it says. These also are Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, transcribed. So I don't know how much authority to give. See, this would kind of be like a title, and I don't know if that title is necessary to be authoritative material or not. But it is recorded in Scripture, so I at least give it that much a weight. All right, so let me show you these Proverbs 25, 2 through 7. It is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. As the heavens for height and the earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from silver, and there comes out a vessel for the king, or for the smith. Take away the wickedness before the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Do not claim honor in the presence of the king, and do not stand in the place of great men. For it is better that it is to be said to you, come up here, than for you to be placed lower in the presence of the prince whom your eyes have seen. So notice this one, again, is a longer proverb that fits together. It's almost like a story.
Right.
So I think those are kind of neat. Here's a shorter one. Like apples of gold in settings of silver is a word spoken in right circumstances. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. So again, whether those are intended, they look like they're two proverbs, but they're certainly on the same topic.
Yeah, okay? There's definitely some parallel there.
Yeah. And then look at verse 21 and 22. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Do you know that sounds pretty familiar from New Testament, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So actually, that proverb was probably first used in the Old Testament, but then the New Testament authors are picking it up and applying it. And if it's wisdom, it'll fit in both cases.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. And 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you know nothing. For you do not know what that day may bring. That was also a statement I think that Jesus makes in the New Testament, or very similar to that. So I think it's interesting that obviously the New Testament knows about some of this wisdom, and even if it's not the exact same proverb, they know the wisdom, and they can actually have it, in the New Testament even.
Yeah.
So I thought that's interesting. Here's another one. Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be like him. Answer a fool as his folly deserves, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Now, this is Proverbs 26, 4 and 5. This is the one that Proverbs was questioned because they thought it was contradictory. And so this was this is because of this proverb here. And if you look at the Hebrew, they are really, really similar. They're just totally opposite of each other. Huh. And then what they finally decided is that the Jewish scribes did is that you need to have wisdom to know when to use verse 4, and you also need to have wisdom to when to use verse 5. So they're both true, but it takes wisdom to know when to use which.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. That's a complicated idea. And I guess that would mean you'd have to have both of them together, basically, too.
Yeah.
They're not so much parallel as kind of,
I
don't know, interrelated in some kind of way, but having both of those, you're kind of guides in a way.
Right, to bounce off of each other when you, do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. That would be somebody where he's so hard-hearted that they'll never listen to you anyway. But the second one, answer a fool as his folly deserves, that he not be wise in his own eyes. Will that be somebody who actually would be willing to listen to you? So you've actually created a relationship with somebody, and you know that if you told him that he's being a fool at this point, he would listen.
Yeah.
Because there's certain people you could tell that and it would bounce off. It wouldn't make any difference. Right, so then you'd use verse 4, I think.
Yeah.
So I think it's helpful for us to know that.
Yeah.
All right. In chapter 26, 6 through 9, he says, and he cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. He who sends a messenger by the hand of a fool, like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is the proverb in the mouth of fools. Oh, I think that is just brilliant. Yeah. Like one who binds a stone in a sling is he who gives honor to a fool. See, the whole thing of a sling is the stone's got to come out, right?
Right.
So if you tie the stone in there, that's like giving honor to a fool. Yeah.
Right.
Like a thorn which falls into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. So it does no good, and it actually hurts more than it helps.
Right. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Now we've got the sayings of Agur. So we're in the appendices now. Mm-hmm. All right. So Proverb 31 1 says, or 30 verse 1 says, the words of Agur, the son of Jacob, the oracle, the man who declares to Ithiel and Ukal, who has ascended into heaven and descended, who has gathered the wind in his fists, who has wrapped the waters in his garment, who has established all the ends of the earth. What is his name or his son's name? Surely you know. Every word of God is tested. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him. Doesn't that sound a lot like what's in Job? Do you remember at one point that, it talks about God as and questioning his ability to create and how he made things. And that sounds very similar. So I thought that's kind of interesting.
And a little different from some of the other Proverbs we've read too.
Yeah. And here's the next one. Two things this is also from Agur. Two things I ask of you. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep discretion and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, that I not be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or that I not be in want and steal and profane the name of my God. Do you see how that is actually brilliant? What he's asking God is don't give him so much that he abandons God and says, I don't even need you, or give him don't give him poverty, or he might have to steal and embarrass God.
Right.
So actually, I think that's a brilliant. Not many of us pray that kind of or even say that kind of proverb, do we? But it's great wisdom.
It is, yeah.
Okay, now we'll go to King Lemuel. Verse 30, chapter 31:1 says, the words of King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. And that's kind of interesting because all the way through there, you've had quite often it talks about the father teaching, but here's a king that his mother now explained to him. Okay, verse 2 says, "What, O my son, and what, O son of my womb, and what, O son of my vows?" And I assume that vows is a marriage vows, I assume. "Do not give your strength to women, or your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink. For they will drink and forget what is decreed, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to him whose life is bitter. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his trouble no more." So she's actually saying, don't make stupid, if you're celebrating and you get drunk, you could make decisions that were really stupid, and that's not right for a king. Right. But then she also says, but there is a place for drink, for like if a person is in such pain, give them a drink to ease the pain. So it's kind of interesting. I thought that it even gives you a reason on why, strong drink is there.
Yeah.
So, all right, now we're at that ideal wife. Okay, and I started out with the excellent wife. That's basically a good translation of what's called the Eshes Hayil. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and she will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She is like a merchant ship. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is still night and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. Now, I think this is a brilliant picture of somebody who's working hard to go, take care of their family. So she's doing all this to do it. And I got a little more on this. And then here she looks well into the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her, and her husband also. And he praises her, saying, "Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates." This almost sounds like Superwoman, right? I mean, you read through Proverbs 31, and I could see a woman looking at it and say, that's just impossible to meet all those standards. Remember, this is poetry and it's Proverbs, so it's giving wise things on what to do. And I actually would argue this is throughout a whole woman's life, that her way of living is this way. And so not that she's got to do all these things, but this is the kind of woman that gives you a wise woman and gives you wisdom.
Right.
So I don't think you have to think of this as Superwoman. I think you have to think of, here's a person who her lifestyle does these kind of things. And
and there's something aspirational about a lot of this, a lot of wisdom literature, because it's telling you how to have the good life. You know what I mean? It's telling you kind of ways you can try to have the things that you want or the things that you need. And so there is something kind of future thinking about all of this.
Yeah, good. Okay. All right. You ready for my Proverbs now?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Here's major themes. The fear of the Lord comes up over and over. Retribution principle comes back over and over. Human speech, because that's probably our easiest way to get in trouble. Human sexuality. It seems like to me it's such a good place where to start, and especially for children, to help teach them about what's right and what's wrong. So it's just brilliant, I think, in Proverbs. Okay, so here's my 46 wisdom bits. All right. Okay, here's one. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stirs up anger. See, that one is so obvious that I don't even need to really explain it. Some of these you will, but that one is, I think, just clear. All right. 15, 16. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and turmoil with it. I think that one's pretty clear too. Yeah. Proverbs 6, 27 through 29. Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not get burned? Or can a man walk on hot coals and his feet not get scorched? So is the one who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her will not go unpunished. Wow. Imagine here. Now, remember, this is in chapter 6. So it's a father or mother to their child or their children. But imagine here's a child realizing that, they see these hot coals in a fire every day. And he's saying, can you put that in your lap and not be burned? Or can you walk on hot coals and not have your feet burned up? And he says, that's the way it is. So what the Proverbs do is they think of a creative way of how to help you to know a wisdom principle. And that one I think is just brilliant, because now every time he sees a fire, he's going to remember what his father told him.
Yeah.
Okay, 15:2. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouth of fool spouts folly. I actually come back to that. We can be true. We can be correct on a lot of. I'm a teacher, so we might be correct on a lot of things we say, but if we say them in the wrong way, no one's gonna get it.
Yeah.
So to me, you've got to find a way to make knowledge acceptable sometimes. And so it just reminds me. All right, 17:9. He who covers transgression seeks love, but he who repeats the matter separates intimate friends. That when that first part seems wrong, right? He who covers transgression seeks love, because that's not always true. But then that second one helps clarify what it means. Yeah. So both of those are necessary to help clarify what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one I think is brilliant. As a ring of gold in swine's snout, so is a beautiful woman who lacks discretion. That in one proverb, it's told, it pictures a great way of here's a person who it seems out of place to have a ring in this as a swine's snout. So is it to have a woman who doesn't have discretion.
Right.
So, brilliant. Okay, 17:14. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so abandon the quarrel before it breaks out. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, so, would that be talking like it's so hard to stop water when it begins flowing?
Exactly. So once it starts going, it's really hard to stop it. Yeah. And that's the same way with a quarrel.
Yeah.
Okay, this next one I love, but you got to think about it. It's one that you'll get and then you'll get again, hopefully. All right. Where no oxen are, the manger is clean, but much increase comes from the strength of the oxen.
That is a little tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it seems like it's saying maybe it's a little bit about taking risks.
It is. Keep going.
Yeah. So that it's kind of like let me just use a biblical example, right?
Okay.
The parable of the talents, right?
Okay.
You do nothing, there's punishment for that. You just bury it.
It's
safe. Technically, you haven't risked anything, but you also haven't done what your master commanded you to do, which was to use these, use this resource and expand it.
Yeah. So isn't that beautiful? I mean, it actually then it's a brilliant way to say it. Well, if you don't have any oxen, you don't have to keep cleaning the stall.
Yeah, but that's true.
You need that oxen to do some good work.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Right. All right. 17:10 says, a rebuke goes deeper into one who has understanding than 100 blows to a fool. And I think that one's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Proverbs 9:16-18. Whoever is naive, let him turn and hear. Let him, he who lacks understanding, she says. Stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that death is there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. And the idea that stolen water would be probably, we remember in chapter 5, we talked about water being a sexual kind of thing. So so if you're stealing water, it sounds like it's sweet, but in actual fact, it's going to come back to pay you. Yeah. So that one's good too. All right. 17:28. Even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is counted as prudent. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
There's a lot of times that I have to keep my mouth shut. It really helps. All right, 16:7. When a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. And I like that one, okay, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. There's even a song about that one, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I think, once again, because it's so wise,
Yeah.
All right. The 14th one, chapter 5 of Proverbs. Drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the street, let them be yours alone and not for strangers with you. We talked about that one already, but I think the way it's pictured is just beautiful.
It is. There's two sides to it, kind of.
Yeah.
Right. Like control yourself, because you'd also want, your partner to be controlled too. Like there's a good, and that image does both. It carries both weight, or weight for both of those ideas. Yeah.
Good. Proverbs 16:23. The heart of the wise teaches his mouth and adds persuasiveness to his lips. I thought that was pretty good, because what that means is that if you learn wisdom, you watch what you say, and it can even add persuasiveness that when you say things.
Yeah.
And this one's pretty obvious. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. That is so true, and we just don't realize it sometimes.
Yeah.
And 14:1, a wise woman builds her house, but the foolish one tears it down with her own hands. Do you see what that one's saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, there's kind of a simple surface version. I'm not sure what the connection necessarily would be.
Okay. What do you think it's getting at?
I mean, I guess like building your house could also maybe be like your family.
Yeah.
Right?
Keep going. Yeah.
So if you're tearing your family down, I guess maybe this is about how you treat your family. Would that be right?
And maybe even what you say.
Yeah.
I think this is even here. As a person, you can either build up your home or you can tear it apart, and your words are part of what's going to do that. So if you start backbiting and stuff like that, it's going to tear apart your family. But you do it to yourself. I think that's what this proverb is so good, is that a person who's wise wants to build their home, not tear it apart. But here's a person that with their words can tear it down and then not even maybe realize it was their own fault that they did it to themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Proverbs 10:12. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions. I like that one, because that is true.
Yeah.
All right. Proverbs 14:15. The naive believes everything, but the prudent man considers his steps. I like that one. We've got to be wise and think about what we're going to say. A lot of times when I say things afterwards, I say, "Oh, why did I say that?" And I think, and I think a naive person believes everything. Everything he's told, he believes. Well, you can't do that, because half of what you're told is not true. So, all right. Proverbs 12:9. Better is he who is lightly esteemed but has a servant than he who honors himself and lacks bread. Yeah, I think that one's just interesting. It's better not to boast yourself up, because in the long run, it's not going to get you anywhere.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. 12:18. There is one who speaks rashly like the thrusts of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Yeah. Again, watch what we say.
Yeah. Well, and so opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and it's what's so good about that is it pictures as a sword cutting away, cutting apart a person. Well, if you use your words carefully, you can help heal people, not cut them apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. 12:10 says, the righteous man has regard for the life of his beast, but the compassion of the wicked is cruel. Yeah, that one gets you thinking, doesn't it? So what that means, that you even care about the, like life of his beast could be a donkey, right? If you're cruel to your donkey, it could die and you'll no longer have it. But a wise person or a righteous person takes care of the things that they have so that so it doesn't come back to bite you, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. Right. All right. Proverbs 4:23. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of life. So there it's talking about what's inside is crucial that you keep it protected, because that's where your life comes from.
Right.
All right. Proverbs 11:14. There is a guidance of where there is no guidance, the people fall, but in the abundance of counselors, there is victory. Yeah. That one actually helps. If you think about it, a lot of times, if there's bad counsel, you can always, not listen to it. But at least getting everybody's opinion at least helps you to know what the options are and how it's going to affect everybody. So I think there's a lot of wisdom there. All right. 11:25. The generous man will be prosperous, and he who waters will himself be watered. What's that mean? Do you know, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's the idea is that you don't have to, if you're generous, you too will be taken care of.
Good.
Like there's kind of a cruel and incorrect logic in that I have to keep everything to myself,
right,
to feed myself. But there's, like that idea, he who waters will himself be watered.
Yeah.
He'll still get what he needs if he's generous.
Yeah. I like the way that's worded, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 18:8. The words of the whisperer are like dainty morsels and go down into the innermost parts of the body. Yeah. There's a bunch of, so it told you the words of the whisperer. So that means things that are
secret.
Secrets and stuff like that. Now, they could be good and they could go down into your body and most parts of your body, but they could also be bad and they could be like gossip or something like that. But people sometimes treasure that in their hearts, even though it's wrong. Yeah. All right. Proverbs 29:20. Do you see a man hasty with his words? There's more hope for a fool than for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And that's probably, that fool is probably that naive one. Remember Petit? Yeah.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Fools have really been, talked about a lot in Proverbs.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then 28:13, he who conceals his transgression will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will find compassion. That's interesting that even in the Proverbs, you've got something like that. So that's we know that in New Testament time, right? But clear in Proverbs, that was wisdom way back then.
Yeah.
And then 27:21, the crucible is for silver and the furnace for gold, and a man is tested by the praise according him.
Huh.
Do you know what that
about him or towards him?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that mean? Do you know what that means?
Yeah, it seems kind of complex, actually, right? Because we know crucibles and furnaces; those are going to be things that purify silver and gold, right? They remove things that don't need to be there, right?
Right.
So, if a person is tested by their praise, I guess that would be like, how do you? Maybe it's like, how do you take in that praise? Is it helping you remove the things that don't need to be there, or is it puffing you up in some kind of way?
Good. And notice it doesn't say a man is tested by the criticism according to him. Notice it's praise. How do you handle praise?
Yeah.
And that shows your true character, I think, is what it's getting at.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. 27:19. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of a man reflects man. Oh,
like what's in your heart is really who you are. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That would
it's self-reflective.
Yeah. Okay. 28:3. A poor man who oppresses the lowly is like a driving rain which leaves no food. I actually think that one's pretty brilliant. A poor man has no way to help somebody out. So if they're oppressing the lowly, there's nothing that a poor man can do to help somebody else out. So it's like driving rain that leaves no food. It's it's
just
damaging.
Away.
Yeah, right. just damages, but does no good.
Yeah.
Okay, here's iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Yeah, we had a church once that had a group called Iron Sharpens Iron.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Okay, Proverbs 27:10 says, "Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in a time of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away." And I think that means, I think that's got two meanings to it. When it's a brother that is, or a neighbor who's near, is somebody who's close, location close to you, but also he's somebody who's more dear to you than a brother who's not, is more distant from you.
Right.
So I think it has two connotations there, but I think it's kind of neat that a neighbor can help you more because he's right there, where that a brother could, even if you're on good terms, if he's miles away, it doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So I think it almost has two connotations there.
Right.
All right. 27:1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day will bring forth. And that sounds very similar to Jesus's words.
Right.
Yeah. Proverbs 18:13. He who gives an answer before he hears is folly and is shame to him.
Yep.
Oh, I've done that.
Quick to listen.
Yeah. Yep. Proverbs 18:17. The first to plead his case seems just until another one comes and examines him.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
That really is. Explain what you think it means.
Well, it's very easy to let the first thing you hear about an event or a circumstance or whatever is shape the whole thing. And we've learned over and over. I mean, this is so true, like in social media where things go so fast and something can spread so quickly we've seen it happen where someone does something terrible and then someone online misidentifies the person who did it. Now if someone else is getting all this flack for something they're not even responsible for, but it can be so easy to believe that when you just see it's the first thing you see and you haven't gotten all the other information to help you illustrate what actually the truth of a situation is.
Yeah. Good. That's it. Okay. 19:11. A man's discretion makes him slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook a transgression. Yeah. New Testament says, be slow to speak and quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So it's a similar kind of thing as that one, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, 25:20. Like one who takes off a garment on a cold day, or like vinegar on soda, is he who sings songs to a troubled heart. What do you think of that one?
Vinegar on soda. Yeah, it's the mismatch, right?
Yeah.
If you're singing songs to a troubled heart, you're not understanding that this person is
hurt.
They're not in a joyful. Bringing joy is not what's appropriate right there. And so it's as kind of ridiculous, I guess, as taking off your jacket on a cold day.
Or even on vinegar and soda. I don't know if you've seen that, but it just bubbles up and
I see.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. 25:11. Like apples of gold in settings of silver is a word spoken in right circumstances.
Yeah, very valuable.
Yeah. All right. This one's cute. 12:14. Bad, says the buyer, but when he goes his way, he boasts.
Yeah. That's right.
We've all done it, right? Oh, that little spot there, it's not brand new,
Yeah.
Proverbs 20:22. Do not say, I will repay evil. Wait for the Lord and he will save you. I like that one. Yeah. That gets you out of a lot of trouble. Okay, Proverbs 21:31. The horse is prepared for battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. Yeah, we can get as prepared as we want, but we have no idea what's going to happen, and we need God to make the victory happen, don't we?
That's right.
Proverbs 20:22:1. A good name is more desired than great riches. Favor is better than silver and gold. Yeah, that's a good one here's 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. So at least we know the wisdom of that. It's not a guarantee, but there is some wisdom there. Oh, I like this next one too, 26:11. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly.
Yeah. It's a powerful image because it seems so nonsensical, but we've all seen dogs do that. And it seems so obviously like the wrong thing to do,
But then we've also done the same thing twice. Right. And
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So what's the purpose of the book of Proverbs?
Well, we've got a couple that we came up with, I think. But a lot of it is how to have, you didn't say this, but I think this is true, but kind of how to have a good life.
Okay.
In many ways. It's how to pursue the right life. And I think the kind of difference, maybe the different way you said that is like, a lot of times Proverbs is telling you like, this is the path towards life versus the path towards death and destruction. It's kind of giving you that separation in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw it, but my picture up there in the corner that has the roads that you've got to choose which way to go. Yeah, and you can either choose the right way or you can choose the wrong way. But just realize there's going to be consequences for both of them.
Right.
Yeah. Right. All right. What's a proverb?
Yeah, we had a lot of definitions for that too. I mean, it's a lot of things. I think in English, we typically think of it as just maybe a Western mindset. It's just a little wisdom saying. It's kind of like a little statement that kind of gives you a nugget of wisdom. But in Hebrew, it's used a lot of different ways. It could be a riddle. It can be a taunt, which that's still kind of a little bit of one that's a little hard for me to kind of conceive of, I think. But it's used in a lot of different ways. Even just as a common saying, which I suppose if it's a common saying, there's probably something deeper in there, some kind of wisdom probably somewhere in there, but it doesn't have to be that same kind of what we normally think of kind of like that parallel structure and really dense little nugget for you to chew on.
Yeah. And it might have a lot more options in Hebrew, right? With a taunt song or something like that. It'll always have that element of wisdom to it, I think. But I think it's just got the broadness in Hebrew.
Yeah.
All right. Why is the fear of the Lord the beginning of wisdom?
I think that has to do with right ordering.
Okay.
Right? Like fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And so all these things we're seeing people act foolishly or act in folly, they're obviously not making decisions in the light of a fear of the Lord. It's maybe we'd call it like fear of the world or something like that. Yeah. Or if that isn't quite right in terms of like the phrase, it would be something selfish. I'm protecting myself or taking care of myself or getting something good for myself.
Yeah. And we could probably say the fear of the Lord is like the foundation of wisdom, maybe. It's what everything else needs to be set upon. Yeah. So that might fit too.
Yeah.
All right. What's the purpose for Proverbs 31:10-31? That's that ideal woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the purpose of that, I mean, I do think it's somewhat aspirational, but it's showing what a good life is marked by.
Okay. Good.
It isn't, I don't think it should be a test in a way. You know what I mean?
Okay.
In some ways it maybe works as a self-test or a way for us to look at ourselves, or for women to look at themselves and say like, where am I headed? But it shouldn't be a cudgel, that others use to kind of put people in their place or something like that.
And I don't think it should be like a checklist. I haven't done this. I haven't done this. I haven't, because in fact, it may be that your whole lifetime you're going to have some things like this, but I think these are also words of wisdom. How would you react if this happened to you, kind of thing? Yeah. Okay. How is the book of James similar to Proverbs?
This is a good one. This is a great question. I don't know if you gave this specifically for me, or came up with this question specifically for me, but I did a little bit of study on James when I was a master's student. And it is interesting. There's a lot of wisdom sayings in James. There's little things where it kind of says, so it said, and sometimes it's referring back to, the Old Testament. Sometimes it's just seems like this is just a general wisdom saying that people are aware of, and it applies in this situation. So that's one thing. There is a lot of wisdom references to wisdom literature in James, but also there's a lot about how you speak. in James.
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of that small book, and that we get a lot of that in Proverbs of just warnings of how, not just warnings, but the good and the bad that can come out of how you speak.
Yeah. Good. Well, hopefully we are a lot wiser than when we started.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a really great episode. I'm glad we talked through this.
Yeah, I once thought it would be wonderful for us to do almost like a book for fathers to use Proverbs to help teach their children certain concepts. And I thought, man, this would be brilliant to have a father go through the book of Proverbs with a child and just teach them the wisdom there. And I never had time to do it, but maybe someday I'll get time to do it.
Yeah. If we need to pause on the podcast for a little bit so we can write this book.
There you go.
No, I think that's true.
Yeah. So we're in the midst of wisdom literature, and next time should be our Ecclesiasticus, which is kind of an amazing book too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a little different for sure. Less aspirational, I would say.
We'll see. I think there's some things in it that can really help us, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to that one.
All right. Well, thanks, Tyler. That was fun today.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Bye-bye.